Hi, and welcome back to Surviving Alzheimer's: Clarity, Courage, and Care. I'm Terry Youngdale, and today we're talking about something that feels mysteriously and maybe even a little intimidating for a lot of families. Today we're going to talk about Alzheimer's clinical trials. Now, if you've been following along, you know, because I've told you a million times, that my mom has been in a Leqembi clinical trial since 2019. 6 years. I've been by her side as her study partner throughout almost every appointment, almost every infusion, every MRI, and all of the moments of hope and uncertainty. So today I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit, and I'm going to talk to you about what it really happens in the clinical trials. Not just the science, not just the logistics, but the human side, the part that nobody really talks about. Because here's what I've learned. Clinical trials aren't just about testing drugs. They're about families. They're about families choosing hope over helplessness. It's families taking action over waiting, and it's about families connecting over isolation. So let's start with the questions that I hear all the time. These are the questions that really keep people up at night. They definitely kept me up at night to begin with. The primary questions are clinical trials safe? Are clinical trial participants just guinea pigs? And how much time will it really take? Who benefits from this? So honestly, those were my questions too. I had no idea what we were signing up for. As much as we had a huge binder full of contracts and all sorts of information, I still didn't really understand what we were going to experience. You know, if you've never been to the grocery store before and someone gives you a big binder about what you'll experience at the grocery store, it still doesn't tell you what the fresh orange juice smells like or what the bakery smells like. You've got to get in there to really experience it. So back in the very beginning, I remember sitting at the first information meeting. Mom was sitting next to me. We were meeting with the lady who became our research coordinator. And she used terms like randomization and double blind, placebo-controlled, and ARIA monitoring. I mean, there was just so many, I didn't understand so much of what they were communicating. So it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. And I kept thinking, are we doing the right thing? Am I turning mom into a lab rat? What if something goes wrong? But at the same time, there's no way that we could, at that time, have afforded the medication on our own. Even if it were available, we couldn't have done that. But here's what I didn't understand then, and what I want you to know now. Clinical trials are the most regulated, most carefully monitored medical experience you can have. So let me break that down into a few pieces. Let's first talk about why clinical trials even exist. Alzheimer's has been one of the hardest diseases to treat. For decades, all we had was a couple of drugs that might slow symptoms down for a little while, but nothing changed the actual course of the disease. Every single drug that makes it to the market starts in a lab. Scientists first test it on cells and then on animals. And if at that point it still looks promising, they move those clinical trials and those tests onto humans. This is where clinical trials come in. There's an entire pipeline starting with preclinical research and then phase 1 trials. Phase 2 trials, they look at dosing and efficacy in larger groups. Phase 3 trials, these are the bigger trials. They are more rigorous studies with hundreds, and in the medications we're going to talk about today, in thousands of participants. And then after all of that comes back and looks good, the FDA has a final chance to review it. It takes years to get through clinical trials. It takes years just to get through some phases of clinical trials. For Leqembi and Kisunla, it's taken decades and billions of dollars, not millions, which is still a huge amount of money, but billions of dollars that have been invested in this. And the truth is, most drugs that start clinical trials fail. So we've learned a lot from the clinical trials, and the truth is we learn more from the failures as they learn from the successes. But when a drug works and when it makes it through the entire process, that's because thousands of families like mine said, yeah, we're willing to be a part of this. So when we look at the different types of Alzheimer's trials, we have prevention trials, and they target people who are at risk but don't have symptoms yet. Maybe they have a family history, or maybe they've tested positive for amyloid, but their cognition is still normal. You have early stage treatment trials. That's what Mom was in. They focus on people with mild cognitive impairment or mild dementia. The goal here is to slow progression. Notice that I did not say to cure Alzheimer's. The goal of the medications we have now is just to slow progression, but just slowing progression is huge. You also have symptom management trials where they're looking at improving the memory or mood of daily function without necessarily changing the disease itself. We also have caregiver intervention trials. These test ways to help support us, the caregivers, and anyone taking care of their loved one. So let's talk about the part that freaks people out the most. This is one of the big questions that I always get. It's the placebos that concern people. And here's the deal. Most Alzheimer's trials have a percentage of people that get the real drug and a percentage of people that get the placebo. Neither the participant or the research team knows who's getting what medication. That's called double blind. So let me say that again because it's really big. It's when the research team nor the participant know who's getting the medication. The only person that knows who's getting the medication is the pharmacist. And even the pharmacist does not put anyone's name on the profiles that he or she keeps. It's just a number. Those parts or those areas of the research center are off limits to everyone but the pharmacist. We did most of our, not most, but all of our work at Kirwan Medical Center, and not even Dr. Kirwan could walk into that area of her facility. Why? because it is the only way to know if the drug actually works. Our brains are very powerful, and there's something called the placebo effect. This is where people feel better just because they think they're getting treatment. So you need a comparison group to see if the drug is really doing something or if it's just hope that's working its magic. Now, does being on placebo mean you're wasting your time? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Because even on placebo, you're getting incredible medical monitoring. You're getting regular cognitive tests. You're getting PET scans. You're getting MRIs. You're getting the blood work. You're meeting with and working with the raters. You have access to the very top specialist in the country, and that is very valuable. So let's talk about who qualifies for these trials. And the truth is, it varies. But let's narrow that down and talk about most of the anti-amyloid trials. Drugs like Leqembi and Kisunla, this is what they're typically looking for. And just FYI, Leqembi and Kisunla still have ongoing trials taking place. So as we go through these, that's where I pulled this information, is from their current trials. Right now, a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment or mild Alzheimer's is required. It cannot be advanced. It can't be mid-stage. It's early stage. And those people need to be between 50 and 85. A biomarker confirmation is also required. That means that you've had a PET scan or a spinal tap that shows that you have amyloid plaque in your brain. Now, the center that you're working with, most of them pay for that. Most people come to them and they don't have that. Even if they do, they're going to redo them, and they will pay for that testing. You also need a study partner. This is someone who can go to all of the key appointments and help track symptoms. They need to be a second set of eyes and ears for the patient. So, unfortunately, there is exclusion criteria. Things that would make a participant or participation too risky. If Alzheimer's is already advanced, you're not going to qualify. If you have certain health conditions like uncontrolled high blood pressure or a bleeding disorder, that could increase the risk, and you're not going to qualify. If your MRI shows certain findings like microhemorrhages, you're not going to qualify. And then there's a list of medications that could interact with the study drug, and that could be a problem too. But you're not going to know that list until you meet with the clinic. I remember when Mom was going through the screening process, it was pretty nerve-wracking. We wanted her to be accepted and get in so badly. And then when we found out that she was in, that was a really good day. That was a really good day. But I also know families who didn't qualify, and that disappointment is real. It's really hard on not just the patient, but the family that so desperately wants to see their loved one get better. If that happens to you, know that there are other options. There are other trials. There are other treatments. There are many other paths to move forward. If you find yourself in that situation, please give me a call. Reach out to me through email, whatever's most convenient. All of my contact information is available below. And I'll walk you through some of the other avenues that you can work through. So let's talk about the study partner role, because this is huge. Of course, I think it's huge because I'm the study partner. It really is huge. I don't think people realize how important that study partner is, or how much it can do to help you in your role as caregiver. In most Alzheimer's trials, you have to have the study partner. That is someone who attends all key appointments with you, not all appointments, but all of the key appointments. Kerwin referred to those appointments as the rater appointments. Those were the ones where mom met with the rater, and then I met with the rater to talk about what I was seeing. So the study buddy or study partner also tracks symptoms and side effects at home. They help to make sure all the medications are taken on schedule and that appointments do not get mixed. You're acting as a reliable reporter, because when you have Alzheimer's, you're not the most accurate reporter of your own symptoms, and it's not your fault. It's the disease. So the study partner fills in those gaps. For me, being mom's study partner, it became everything. I'll go into that more because there's, yeah, I'll go into that more later. You know how caregiving can feel so helpless. You're watching someone that you've known, most of us have known our whole lives, and that we love deeply, and we're watching someone decline. And in the beginning, at least for us, there was nothing that we could do. We were powerless. And we watched my grandmother go through it. So it was hard watching mom decline and thinking that we were going to watch her go down the same path that grandmother did. But as a part of the clinical trial, I had a role. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was contributing to her care, and I was a part of her team. It gave me structure with appointments every 2 weeks. And then when we moved to the auto-injector trial, those appointments became every 4 weeks, and then every 6 weeks. But still, I had a purpose. I was tracking her symptoms. I was reporting what I noticed and staying on top of the schedule. And what I wasn't expecting was for that to heal something inside of me too. Research shows this. Caregivers who participate in clinical trials report reduced feeling of helplessness. You gain a better connection with your loved one, and you gain more hope. That was certainly true for me. It wasn't always easy. There are hard days, but still having that role being active instead of passive, it changed everything. So let's talk about the safety part of it now, because I know that this is really the part that keeps people up at night. Are clinical trials safe? And the answer is yes. They are designed to be as safe as humanly possible. Every clinical trial has to be approved by something called an Institutional Review Board, or IRB. This is a group of scientists, doctors, ethicists, and community members who review the protocol. They work to make sure the entire procedure and everything that's involved is ethical, and that participant safety comes first. They don't approve anything that is unnecessarily risky. Second, there's constant monitoring. You're not just given a drug and sent home. you are getting regular labs. You're getting MRIs, you're getting PET scans, physical exams, cognitive tests. The research team is watching you very closely. Third, and this is super important, there are independent data monitoring committees. These are outside of the experts, and they review the data as the trial is happening. And if they see that there are any safety concerns, they're the ones that will pause or stop the trial immediately. While this did not happen to us, I have read other people's stories about being involved in a research trial where about halfway through there was a safety, well, there's tons of safety reviews, but halfway through the trial was paused due to something that was found in the safety review. It was only paused for a few weeks while the data monitoring committee reviewed and looked through everything. And at first, the people that were in that trial were scared because, what did they find? What had gone wrong? And I'm sure that they were frustrated too, because once you get that momentum going, you don't want to stop. But soon they realized that the pause really helped them trust the process even more, because the researchers were not going to risk someone's life just for data. They were not going to push forward if there was any question about safety. And that's what regulation looks like. That's what participant safety comes first actually means. So let's look at some of the myths that we hear about. And this is a question that is asked every time I go out and speak to a group. If it is not the first question, it is the second question. And actually, it usually doesn't come across as a question. It comes across as a statement. You are not a guinea pig. You're not. You're a partner in research. You're a pioneer in this research process that's carefully regulated and constantly monitored. You have rights, and you can leave the clinical trial at any time. Anytime throughout the entire trial, you can go. If it doesn't fit your needs, if you become uncomfortable with it for any reason, all you have to do is say the word and it's over. So the other big question is placebo means wasted time. The answer to that is also no. Placebo data is essential for proving that treatment works. And even on placebo, you're getting extensive medical care and monitoring that you probably would not get otherwise. Myth number 3 is that trials only help future patients. And I can tell you 100% that is not true. When it comes to Leqembi and Kisunla, the participants see personal benefits, especially in prevention, especially with early treatment trials. Even if you do not see immediate benefits, the medical monitoring and the community and the sense of purpose, those things help now. And one of the things that I wish more people understood was that clinical trials are not perfect. They're not a guarantee, but they're not scary. They're not exploitative experiments either. They're families like mine choosing to be a part of something bigger. Families that choose hope and families that choose action. So let's get into the part that I like the most, the human side. When Mom originally enrolled in 2019, I expected medical procedures. I expected data collection. I expected appointments and paperwork. But what I didn't expect was the communities in the other people that were involved in clinical trials, and the community in the people that worked at the research center. As you've heard me say in the past, we worked with Kirwan Medical Center. When we sat in that first appointment, I never thought for a second that the people that were there would become our family, that would become so much a part of our lives. You know, I wasn't expecting them to become so much a part of our lives. From the moment we arrived, at that time, it was Maddie who was at the door to greet us. One of the coordinators would come get us from the lobby and take us back to a treatment room. And then our nurse Julius would come in, our coordinator, originally Sarah, and then Jenna would come in, and the conversations weren't just about what medications mom was on and how she felt. They were our friends. They are our friends. And we wanted to see the new pictures of Jenna's new grandbaby. And right now we get to experience the pictures of the new grandbaby on the way, of the baby shower that was just a week and a half ago. We got to experience the joys of Julius's kids going from middle school into high school, and their participation in the McKinney band. You know, we've working with the Raiders, working with Tiffany and Dr. Harris for 6 years. We became friends. And Dr. Harris with his heavy metal silver skull ring, and Tiffany and I, we always had to make sure that we got our giggles out in the beginning, because the rest of the appointment was recorded as they're asking questions. And so would have to get those giggles out in the beginning. And then, you know, the pharmacist that we worked with, and it's a huge family of people led by Dr. Kirwan. And, you know, today is the first day that I'm feeling fall starting to blow through Dallas. And it reminds me of the Thanksgiving meals that as a family we've had together. And there's that moment at Thanksgiving where you usually ask everybody, so what are you thankful for this year? And every year, Kirwan's been on that list. Not just Kirwan Medical Center, but the names of the individuals who helped us and who supported us when we were scared. That's what you will never read in one of those contracts. And I can't promise that every clinic is going to provide that, but that was our experience. They became our friends, they became our family, and they became our tribe. One of the ladies that I met in this whole process, and I'll call her Susan, her mother was in a clinical trial also. Not the same one that we were in, but another anti-amyloid infusion treatment that's now FDA approved. And she and I would text between appointments and because I wanted to see what kind of results her mom was getting on one treatment, and she wanted to see what results my mom was getting on another treatment. And so we still check in with each other a lot. But there also came the day when her mom could no longer be a part of the trial. And of course I cried, but her mom couldn't be a part of the trial any longer because she had taken all 18 doses. And because the plaques in her brain were gone. And so, yeah, we cried because it is such a miracle that these treatments are available now. We still keep up with each other. And one of the things that we were really able to talk about, and the only person I've been able to have these conversations with, is she and I both have similar genetic profiles to our mothers. She and I both have ApoE4 genes. And so it's important to have somebody that you can verbalize those fears as you watch your parent go through something, as you watch your parent go through a decline and then find treatment and level off and then level up a little bit, but to also be able to talk about your individual fears. So another participant that I met with, but I guess it was about the same time that her mom left the trial. One of the things that he said to me was, I thought I'd feel like a lab rat, like I was just another rat in a cage. But instead, I became a part of a team working towards something that was bigger than me. And that's it. You are not alone in this. You are part of a community. You're contributing to something that not only could change the future for millions of families, it absolutely 100% is changing the future for thousands of families today. Right now, today, is changing that trajectory. Over time, as more people become aware of this, and as more physicians are willing to prescribe Leqembi and Kisunla, it will be millions of families. Those medications are available in the US, have been approved by the FDA. Within the last 30 days, it was approved in Australia. And yesterday, from the day that I'm recording this, not the day that you're hearing this, Canada approved Leqembi. That's big. That's really big. So as a caregiver, being a part of this trial was healing. The helplessness of caregiving and watching, like I said, someone you love decline is powerless. That's the hardest part of Alzheimer's. But in the trial, I had a role. I mattered. And I was contributing to her day-to-day care in a meaningful way, but it also gave me structure. I had a purpose. Not only did I have a team of professionals, but they included me as a part of that team. And that changed everything for me. Something I want to be clear about here, though, is clinical trials are not for everybody. And that's okay. Some families choose other paths. Many families choose lifestyle interventions with diet, exercise, and brain training. Others choose spiritual approaches. Others use all of those approaches and use them to complement this therapy or other therapies. Others just choose to maximize quality time together. And every single one of those options are valid. And every one of those options, no matter what you feel is right with Alzheimer's treatment, every one of those choices is to be respected, period. What matters isn't which path you choose. What matters is that you choose something. Do not let an Alzheimer's diagnosis steal your agency, your hope, or your humanity. Whether you join a trial or not, you are not alone in this journey. There's power, real power, in just making an informed, intentional choice about how you're going to face what's ahead. Also remember, no decision is a decision. It's just a passive decision. So if at this point you're thinking, okay, I want to learn more, how do I find the trials? Here are your best resources. The first is the Alzheimer's Association TrialMatch. It is a free service where you answer just a handful of simple questions about yourself or your loved one, and they match you with trials that you might qualify for. It is super helpful, and that out of all of the solutions is my favorite to send people to. Or when I'm working with someone, it's the first source that I go to for them. The second would be the ClinicalTrials.gov website. This is a government database, and it includes every single clinical trial happening in the US. You'll have to narrow it down and search by condition, your location, the trial phase, all of that. It will also give you an opportunity to go back and look at the trial data from all of the other trials. So if, for example, you only want to be a part of a phase 3 trial, that's a perfectly respectable choice. You can go back on ClinicalTrials.gov and search, for example, Leqembi or Band 2401 and pull up all of the data on all of the previous trials. You can see how many people were involved in and received the medication. You'll see what percentage received the placebos. This is your best source for the best detail information. It is not written for someone, or all of the data that's there is not written and presented for people without a medical background. So keep that in mind as you open up some of these documents. You've got to do research on a lot of independent individual terms to understand what brings it all together. So some of those documents would take weeks to get through. They're also 100 pages long, but it would take me weeks to go through and find all the terms that I didn't understand, research those terms, understand them, and then go back and reread. So some of them can take some time, but if you truly want the best information, the best uncensored information, ClinicalTrials.gov is where you'll find it. Another option is working with your local memory clinic or Alzheimer's disease research clinic. If you're already working with a neurologist or a memory specialist, ask them about the trials. A lot of the research happens through those centers, and they can tell you what's available locally. Or lastly, call me. I can pull up all of the data that I just mentioned. I use the same resources, but I've been through those documents with the clinical trial information from the government website. I'm not a physician. I am just a girl whose mom went through a research program and who needed to understand what was happening. So I will be more than happy to help you with any of that. Before you enroll, here are some of the questions that you should ask. Ask how often are the visits. With some of the new trials that are out, you don't have to go in every 2 weeks. You're working with auto-injectors. You're working with oral medications, a simple pill. Ask them, what's the time commitment? If they say, and this is my personal comment, and I hope this doesn't anger them. When you ask about the time commitment, if they say, oh, you just have to come in and it's a few hours, know that a few hours means minimum half the day. Minimum. When you get further through the process, you do have to go back for rater appointments. And most of those appointments take a full day to complete. So keep that in mind. What is honestly just a couple of hours for them is not a couple of hours for you. Also ask who pays for what. The vast majority of clinical trials pay for all the healthcare monitoring, all of the lab work, all the MRIs, all the PET scans, all the medications. Some of them even will pay for your travel, but not all of them. So make sure you know exactly what your financial commitment will be. Ask what happens when the trial ends. Can you continue to take the drug? Ask what the percentage of people receiving placebo versus the real medication is. And then a big important question to ask is, if you end up with the placebo, after what period of time will you have the option to take the real medication? I am not 100% sure that all of them offer you that solution, but I know in Mom's clinical trial that if she had been someone who ended up with the placebo, she was not, but if she had received the placebo after a specific period of time, and I think it was at the 1.5 year point, they would communicate, or at least Kerwin Medical would learn that she was taking the placebo, and then Mom would have the opportunity to begin to take the real medication at that time. They would still monitor, that she would still go through all they would provide everything, just as they would as if she started with it. So it's different. It's different for many different trials, but make sure you know that. That's going to be important. Ask what the potential side effects are. That's enormously important. Confirm that you can leave the trial at any time. You can, but make sure you get that in writing. Don't be afraid to ask these questions. This is your health, and you and your study partner have to advocate for yourselves. This is your time, your health, your decision, and you need and deserve this information. So let's go into one more thing before we wrap this up. And I will do this without crying, I promise. The drug that Mom was testing at the time was called Band 2401. Now it's called Leqembi. Mom went through the infusion testing, and she went through autoinjector testing. Both of those the medication with both delivery solutions are now approved by the FDA. And as I mentioned before, it's approved in Australia now. And as of yesterday, it's now approved in Canada. And that is huge. For Mom and I, it means that we spent many years in the trial, through the appointments, the infusions, the scans, through 7 different ARIA events that were beyond terrifying, through the hope, through the worry. We were able to contribute to a drug that is now available to families across the country, in Australia and in Canada. There were thousands of participants. I can't even begin to imagine how much data, hundreds, if not thousands, of turning points where the scientists saw that, yes, something was working, that it's actually clearing the amyloid and that it's slowing the decline. Tens of thousands of people were involved in this. And the FDA said, yes, it works. My mom got to be a part of that. Together, we were a part of that. We were pioneers in the development of this medication. And I have a great sense of pride of being a part of that. And now families who are just getting diagnosed have an option that they did not have 2.5 years ago. Now they have not just options, but choices. What does it do for me personally? It provides a great sense of confidence because I do have genetics similar to my mom's. I watched my grandmother go through this and lose her life to Alzheimer's. I watched my mom decline and fight her way back. I spent a long time worried about what happens when I get Alzheimer's. Who's going to take care of me? As I would look at jobs, the fear and the terror of taking on responsibility, where if I developed Alzheimer's, I could hurt someone. This trial gave me the confidence to know that if that does happen, it's okay. If I develop the same thing, there's a medication that's available for me, and one that my mom was willing to sacrifice her brain through all 7 of those ARIA events. Of course, they healed, and of course, she's doing great now. But we didn't know that when they happened. We didn't know that. It gives me the confidence to sit in this chair today with this microphone and tell you unequivocally that this works. It gives me the confidence to start 2 new companies that does nothing but focus on communicating that information to people. Alzheimer's Survivor and Memory Treatment Advisors. If I was not a part of that trial, I wouldn't have that confidence. The person I was before this trial was somebody who was very scared and very afraid of declining and declining alone. I don't have that anymore. So bottom line, Alzheimer's clinical trials are not mysterious. They're not scary. And you're not going to be a guinea pig. They are structured, they are regulated, and essential for finding better treatments. For families who qualify, they offer early access to the most promising therapies that are available. Clinical trials do provide unparalleled medical monitoring and the chance to be a part of something that is so much bigger than ourselves. But beyond the science and logistics, Trials represent something profound. It's the choice to be active rather than passive. It's an opportunity to move forward in confidence, to be helpful, to be hopeful rather than helpless, and to be connected rather than isolated. Whether you decide a trial is right for you or not, I hope that this episode has given you something precious, information, clarity, and more than any of it, the confidence to make a decision that aligns with your values and your family's needs. Because the truth that I've learned over these 6 years is the journey is hard enough without also feeling lost and uninformed. You deserve to understand your options. You deserve to feel empowered, and you deserve support from someone who's walked this path. If you want to explore whether a trial might be right for you or your loved one, I'm here. I help families navigate the trial search, the screening process, and the practical realities so you can make a confident and informed choice. More importantly, I help you find your footing in a journey that can feel overwhelming, because I've been there, and you don't have to figure it all out alone. You can book a free 10-minute clarity call with me. Just go to my website, memorytreatmentadvisors.com, and click on the schedule button. Together, we'll talk about your situation, your questions, and what makes sense for your family. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Please come back next week when we talk about quantum healing in the world of Alzheimer's. Thank you for showing up for yourself and your loved one with courage and intention. You're not alone on this journey. I'm Terry, and I hope to see you next week.